What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Garrett. I'm a 7-figure Amazon seller, showing you guys how you can make a living off Amazon as well. In today's video, we're going to help a lot of people out. We're going to go over 3 or 4 different scenarios that I want you guys to start to be mindful of when it comes to making your sourcing and buying decisions. Right? Some different types of Keepa graphs are really good ones to avoid, or at least account for in the beginning of your purchasing process. All to come in today's video, so stay tuned and enjoy. So the first product we're going to go over, or the first type of product I should say, are going to be scenarios where there's a big skewing factor in the velocity, right? And so we'll kind of walk through the analysis on this individual listing, right, this Nike hat listing, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right, from the macro perspective, from face value, it looks like it's potentially interesting, right? 2,300 sales, obviously there's a lot of variations, but let's walk through the process and play out how we would go through this analysis. Right, so first and foremost, we want to really dig into the actual ratings and the relative velocity of this listing to see where we stand with this gray hat, right? Looks like ASIN is ending in N35. So we want to come down here and find our individual skew. N35. So this, clearly isn't one of the faster moving variations. I missed it, N35. Should just Control F, but there it is right there. Right, so less than 1%, only 21 ratings, when some of the big players on this listing are garnering over 2,000 ratings. So it's clearly not one of the faster moving ones. But say let's take 1% of our overall population, of our variation, and let's estimate that 1% of our listing is going to this individual size. May or may not be true, doesn't necessarily matter. 1% of 2,300 is 230. No, that's 10%. 1% is 2 of. Is that 23? Sorry. 2,300 times 1%. It's 23. So only 23 listings. So not super interesting. But for argument's sake, let's just assume that was 10%, right? 10% of the overall variation, of the overall velocity, is going to this individual listing, right? It makes it a little more interesting. So we'll say over 200 sales are going to this hat, right? Over 200 sales each and every month are going to this hat. Sounds plausible, right? If it's profitable, 200 sales, that can be fine. A couple of things that lead us to. First and foremost, what does the competition look like? What does the buy box look like? And this is the big nuance that I want you guys to start being on the lookout for, are these sort of scenarios. When there's a major holder of the buy box, when there's a significant seller on the listing, right? Obviously, this is a big seller in relation to everyone else on the listing, but whether or not the size comparison, right? What we're really after is this 86%, right? We can track that back over the course of the lifespan of this listing, and we realize over the past year, this particular seller has, consistently claimed over 80-90% of the sales going to this variation listing. What does that mean for us in the scope of buying or selling this product, right? So if we're working our way down, if we're continuing to peel back the layers of the velocity of this listing, we start with 2,300 sales, 10% of 2,300 is 230. And if you say, okay, well, if I split 230 sales across 4 or 5 sellers, right, if we acknowledge there's 9 offers, right, and a couple of them are too high, so there's really only 6 or 7 competitive sellers, well, that may be interesting, but that's not true, right? 230, call it 300 sales, split across 6 sellers would be interesting, but we know that there's going to be a skewing factor as we talk about, right? Because one seller is owning 80%. So 230, 80% of that is probably 180, almost 200, somewhere in that range of sales per month that one particular seller is listing or selling, right? Hey, quick commercial break. I appreciate you guys supporting and following the channel. If you are enjoying this particular video, which I'm assuming you are if you're still watching it to this point, make sure you subscribe to the channel, scroll down, hit that subscribe button. Helps me out, helps the channel out. Let's get back to the content. So it's not 230. It's not about 230 sales that are available. It's really only 20% of 230, which is whatever it is, 30, 40, something like that, which is a whole lot less interesting, especially when you factor in the other sellers that are also priced competitively, right? And this is a concept that you can take and scale out for your entire business while you're sourcing. You always want to be acknowledging and on the lookout for any sort of majority holder of the buy box, because again, that's going to be a significantly skewing factor. Now, this can play out both ways. Say there's one seller that's claiming 80, 85, 70% of the buy box. Of course, not the brand. We'll get into that next, right? Claiming 70% of the buy box, 80% of the buy box, but the listing moves a whole lot more. So say if this variation sold 2,000 times, right, and one seller claimed 80%, well, that still leaves hundreds of sales left over, right? And if those 100 sales left over are split across 2, 3, 4 sellers, well, that could be, again, interesting. So it's not necessarily the exact percentage of sales of the buy box that's being claimed by a seller. It's more so what that means in a quantifiable perspective, right? What is this 81%? What is this 80%, 85%, whatever that is? What does that mean in terms of tangible sales in relation to this product environment? So you always want to start to really conceptualize what's going on in the individual market and look for these big skewing factors. Amazon plays the same role, right? If Amazon's on a listing 80% of the time, 85% of the time, that's fine. We can quantify that, but we can also quantify, more interestingly, the other 8, 10, 15% that Amazon's not claiming. And so what does that 10, 15% equate to? How many other sellers are in contention for those 10, 15% of the time? And that's how we're really making decisions when it comes to velocity for these sorts of listings where there is a big player in the space. So that's scenario number one that I want you guys to start to really have a sense for as you're sourcing. Next one we're going to go over, this one's a little bit more self-explanatory, is anytime, right, there's simply just one or two sellers, or again, in this case, the brand on the particular listing, right? It's not always going to be as obvious, right? Obviously, in this case scenario, FG Organics, that's the brand, right? We want to avoid that at all costs. But sometimes it's not going to be as obvious. Maybe there's one or two sellers on a listing. Neither one of them are the brand, and it looks profitable. Again, that's going to be most often times a scenario that we're going to skip and pass over. So definitely be on the lookout and be wary of any listing that has one or two sellers, three sellers, maybe for some scenarios, right? But oftentimes 1, 2, or 3. You're going to really want to have your spidey senses up and be cautious moving forward. Maybe you want to look into the brand. Maybe do some research. Again, consult SellerAmp, see what they say in terms of potential IP issues, things like that. But anytime there's really a low number of sellers, whether the brand or not, you really want to be cautious. Again, of course, not go too deep. Maybe place a test order of 5, 10, 15 units just to see how it plays out, whether it's super profitable or not. Obviously, the more profitable it is, the more a test order makes sense to see if you can actually get in there. The theory here is there's a ton of smart Amazon sellers. The case that the scenario where there's a listing that's only being sold by one or two people, especially if it's like a big brand, not super likely. So you definitely want to be more cautious than not when you're dealing with listings that have a couple handful of sellers across the entire lifespan of the product. Scenario number 3 that we want to talk about, and of course we're recording this in the beginning of August in 2023. This is going to be a lot of the time where we start to see things like this with back to school, with Q4, some particular season items taking off. But this activity is something that I want you guys to, of course, be mindful of as you're sourcing and buying, especially in the day and age that we're in with leads groups and BOLO groups and all these discords and things like that where leads are being shared. Anytime where there's a significant increase in offers over a very short period of time, we want to be definitely aware of, and we're certainly not going to want to go deep on those. And if we're on FBA offers where this is happening, we're definitely going to want to try and liquidate and exit that market before it gets too bad, right? But we'll see, kind of track what happened here. Price was very good, right? Obviously 42, 43. This could be profitable up here, and we were probably making a ton of money, right? Offers are pretty steady, 9, 10, 11, 12 in this range. This was all very good. Stable buy box, stable offers. Everything is good. However, and that happened for the past couple of years. For whatever reason, something happened here where the offers went from 9 to 10 to 14 to 60, and now it really starts to increase 40s, right? 48, 50, and see what happens with the price. Went from 44, dropped to 39. Someone undercut at 26, 35, right? And that's what we see. Price pretty much got cut in half in this case scenario, and that's always going to happen in terms of that inverse relationship between offers and price, right? Because we assume, and accurately so, that the demand is pretty much going to be the same, of course, with seasonal items and things like that. But there's not really going to be anything that really changes demand. And so because we're going to kind of hold that demand steady, excluding seasonal items, any increase in supply with a steady demand is going to lead to that drop in price. Happens 100% of the time. So just be on the lookout for any of these sorts of scenarios where there's a really steep increase in offer count, because that's oftentimes going to lead to a drop in buy box, drop in price, drop in market, and oftentimes us losing a ton of money. So that's going to be it for today's video. Definitely be on the lookout for these specific scenarios that we talked over. First and foremost, of course, the dominant player, any skewing factor in the listing. The second one being the brand or another exclusive seller on the listing. And the third one being just that increase in offer count. The more accurate your decisions become, the more money you make, and the faster this business will grow. Enjoy your journey, guys. If you like the video, comment, subscribe to the channel. We will see you in the next one.